Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is Relentless Press. I am your host, Abraham Opatz, and you know what this is. It is Wednesday, which means we have running back rankings coming out. We're going to go over 1 to 40. We're going to cover some omissions that I did not decide to put in. We're going to talk about what they've done so far, what that outlook is going to be based on their matchups, so that you can crush your game this weekend. So without further ado, let's get into the running back rankings. At number 1, we have Derrick Henry. Now, he gets the Jets on the road. He is the current overall running back 1 by 14.5 points. He has been dominant. He already has 80 carries on the season and is averaging 4 catches a game, which is something that he has definitely been working on in the offseason, and it is showing. The Jets are just a middle-of-the-road defense. Obviously, it doesn't really matter because he is King Henry for a reason. At 2, we have Alvin Kamara, and he gets the Giants. Now, Kamara bounced back after brutal weeks in 1 and 2 to come back and finish his RB5 last week. We liked him a lot in our rankings video last week, putting him up at number 11, even though there were doubts, and he produced. Now, he's averaging nearly 20 touches a game, and we know that they're going to continue to ride him and keep the ball out of Mr. Interception, Jameis Winston. The Giants are bottom half in the league, giving up points to running backs, and that will continue. Now, at number 3, we have my main man, Dalvin Cook. This is obviously assuming that he's able to suit up, and if he does, it's about volume and production. He's averaging 25 touches a game. He's still RB20 on the year with just playing 2 out of those 3 games. Now, I would say if he doesn't play and you have Alexander Madison is a low-end RB2. We saw him produce last week against Seattle, and I think that he is a safe play if Cooks has to sit. At 4, it's Austin Eckler. Now, he didn't go off quite as much as we would have hoped he did last week against the Chiefs, but he still produced just fine. He is averaging 16 touches a game, and he has 279 yards of total offense on the season. He's also produced through the air recently. When he had 0 targets in week 1, he has bounced back and caught all 15 over the last 2 weeks. Joe Mixon rounds out our top 5, and he did very well against a tough Pittsburgh defense in week 2. He had 90 yards on just 18 carries. He is second in the NFL to King Henry with 67 rushes and 286 yards rushing. Now, he's due for a touchdown. He hasn't got one in the last 2 weeks. I expect him to get one in this game against a very poor Jaguars defense. At 6, we have Aaron Jones, and he gets the tough matchup against Pittsburgh. He finished RB50 in week 1, and since then he has rebounded and is currently the RB2 overall. He's caught all 10 of his targets, and he leads all running backs with 5 total touchdowns, 2 on the ground, and actually 3 through the air. I think we might need to temper expectations a little bit, but I still love him, and he is a must start against the Steelers. At 7, it's Naji Harris, and we called his coming out party last week in our running back rankings video, and he delivered. Now, he is first in the NFL with 27 targets. He's going to continue to see a hefty workload, especially with the banged up wide receiver room in Pittsburgh. He gets Green Bay this week, which we don't hate that matchup, as the Packers are a bottom 10 run defense. As at 8, it's Nick Chubb. He gets Minnesota this week. He comes in averaging 5.5 yards a carry, and he also is given 16 rushing attempts a game, so we love the volume. He has 3 rushes of over 20 yards, tied for first in the NFL, and his worst game of the season as far as yardage production was 83 in week 1, so he has been solid. He comes in with 283 yards of total offense, which is great, as is the matchup with a bottom half run defense in Minnesota. Jonathan Taylor slides in at number 9, and he has yet to find the end zone so far this year. I think this changes against Miami this week. He's averaging 16 touches a game, so the volume volume is there, and Miami has a bottom 10 rushing defense. He has 241 yards of total offense, and although his passing game work has dwindled, I expect that to change in this matchup where the 0-3 Colts are desperate for a win. I think they lean heavily on Jonathan Taylor in this game, and he answers the bell. Rounding out our top 10, we have David Montgomery. Now, we saw how critical he was to that game plan against the Browns. They're going to continue to lean on him as they try to ease Justin Fields into it. Monty is averaging 17 touches a game and nearly 4.5 yards a carry. Now, the Lions defense certainly doesn't scare us, and I think that he is going to respond enough to produce. At 11 is a guy we liked a lot, and he produced last week, and that is Ezekiel Elliot. Now, he's tied for first in the NFL with 3 runs of 20 yards or more. He has back-to-back top 10 finishes, including RB3 last week, and he is rolling. Now, he does face a tough defense in this matchup, but he's going to be fine and produce as a RB1. At number 12 is Deandre Swift, and he is currently the RB3 on the season. He has 23 targets and is averaging 20 points a game. Chicago is solid up front for sure, but Swift has 289 total yards so far this season, and they're going to continue to find ways to get him involved. I still like him in a tough matchup against the Bears. At 13, it's Antonio Gibson, and he certainly saved owners' days last week with his 73-yard electric touchdown catch and run. If you haven't seen it, pause this, go check it out, come back. It was awesome. Even though this isn't a great matchup with Atlanta, I still like him because he's still getting 17 touches a game. He is a solid high-end RB2. Saquon Barkley's at 14, and he finally broke out last week after shredding his injury designation coming into that game. He's averaging over 4 targets a game, and his workload is only going to continue to rise. I like him here. Chris Carson is in at 15, and he has been nothing but consistent. He hasn't finished lower than RB20 in any single week. Now, he is currently the RB13 and is averaging over 15 touches a game. Last week against the Vikings, he averaged 6.7 yards a carry. He is solid. You set him and forget him. In at number 16 is Kareem Hunt. Now, he is actually coming in as the RB7 overall, averaging 17 points a game. He has caught 10 out of his 11 targets and is averaging over 10 yards a catch on his receptions. He had an explosive touchdown last week against Chicago. Highlight reel for sure. He is not the RB2 in Cleveland. He is more of the 1B to Chubb's 1A. At 17 is another guy that we nailed the bounce back call on, and that is James Robinson. He finished as the overall RB4 last week, is averaging 5 targets a game, and gets a Cincinnati defense that we don't fear. At 18, we have more of a projection than an absolute certainty, and that's Chubba Hubbar. Now, at Dallas, he should get a hefty workload sliding in for CMC, who's going to be out a couple weeks with that hamstring injury. We aren't certain of anything, but if he sees close to the workload that we're expecting, he'll be fine here as a mid-tier RB2. At 19, we have Miles Sanders. He gets a Kansas City defense that hasn't really been able to stop anyone. Now, Sanders is averaging 5.2 yards per carry. He's getting 4 targets a game, and he has 227 total yards of offense on the season. He's going to produce in what will be a high-scoring affair against Kansas City. The game we were hoping and praying for, if you're a CEH owner, finally showed, and that's why we have Clyde Edwards-Elaire in at number 20. He was able to get 100 yards on the ground. He was able to catch a touchdown pass as well, and he comes in averaging 15 carries a game at a 4.3 yards per clip. He's still a low-end running back 2 until he shows some consistency. We have Darrell Henderson Jr. at number 21, and he gets Arizona this week. Now, he's only played 2 games, but he's gotten 21 carries on average in those games. He's also averaging 11.5 yards per reception. If he's back, you're a little concerned with the matchup, but you're not going to pass up an opportunity with this high-scoring Rams offense. At 22, we have Josh Jacobs, and we are hoping that he comes back this week, and if he does, the volume there should be enough to produce against a Los Angeles Chargers defense that has certainly struggled. At 23, it's Myles Gaskin. Now, he had 14 touches in his first 2 weeks, and he had 13 last week. So if we continue to see that type of volume, I think he's a very safe low-end running back 2. Now, there's some risk here with his workload, slightly unknown, but I think he's worth the gamble. Because what is Miami gonna do? Like, throw the ball? At 24, it's Chase Edmonds, who comes in averaging 10 carries and over 4 targets a game. Now, he hasn't finished so far in the year any worse than where we have him here. He had 2 touchdowns vultured last week, and we don't love the matchup with the Rams, but we like the volume. At 25, it's Mike Davis, who hasn't had a single game where he has produced single-digit numbers. Now, he's averaging 16 touches a game, so you like that volume, and he should be fine to produce as a high-end flex. He has a solid floor, but probably lacks a little bit of upside. At 26, it's Melvin Gordon III, who comes in averaging 12.7 yards per reception, although he just has 7 targets. He is seeing 14 carries a game and has 269 total yards thus far. He has a safe play in a decent matchup. At 27, it's Elijah Mitchell, who should be back after suffering that shoulder injury and missing last week. He gets a great matchup against the Seahawks, and as long as his workload is solid, he will produce. Now, there is some risk here because we don't know what it looks like. We never really do in the 49ers backfield, but I am betting on him to get at least 15 touches here. At 28, it's Jamal Williams, who, to be honest, should probably be higher in our rankings. He's the RB10 overall, averaging 15 points a game. He has 93 receiving yards. He's caught 13 out of his 14 targets. And even though the matchup isn't ideal, you can't really get better upside for a running back in this range. We move to 29 and we have Nyheim Hines, who gets the Dolphins. He's averaging 11 touches a game and he's averaging almost 10 yards per reception. It's great to see him bounce back with 11 touches last week after he had only 2 the week before. Now, he has finishes of RB19 and RB13 on the season. He's got good upside and is a solid flex option specifically in this range. Javonte Williams is here at 30 and he is seeing 13 carries a game himself. Now, of course, his upside is capped due to being in a timeshare with Melvin Gordon, but I still like this matchup against Baltimore and think he'll see enough work to produce. We have Devin Singletary at number 31. He has nearly 200 yards of total offense. We love this matchup. We love his 5.1 yards per carry and his average of 3 targets a game. We just hate that inconsistency, but I'm banking on something this week against a horrible Texans defense. At 32, we have Leonard Fournette, who saw his chances of a decent day last week killed by game script. Now, we like this matchup a lot more. He's still averaging 13 touches a game, and so I still think that he's a decent option here at 32. Cordero Patterson comes in here at 33. He's averaging 7 carries and 5 targets a game. He definitely has a tough matchup here, but it's hard to pass up 238 yards of total offense in this range. He's a solid flex, but there's a potentially a boom-bust feel here, depending on how many touches he actually ends up getting. Next guy is someone we really missed on last week. We had him all the way up in that mid-level RB2 range, and he just didn't see the workload, and he wasn't able to produce. It's 34, and it's Damien Harris. He has another tough matchup against Tampa Bay this week, but he is seeing almost 7 touches a game. So I still like that volume for him to be able to produce as a low-end flex. Might as well jumble the guys I missed altogether, and we do that here at 35 with Tyson Williams. He saw only 6 touches against Detroit, which really hurt, obviously, fantasy managers. Now, he comes in with 209 yards of total offense. He's averaging 6.1 yards a carry, so you'd think Baltimore would want to get a guy with that kind of production more involved, but we just don't know. It's another tough matchup here, so it makes him a boom or bust running back 3 based on the mystery split of touches in this backfield. At 36, we have Tony Pollard against a really tough Carolina defense. Now, he's averaging 9 carries and 6.8 yards per carry, and at 65 yards last week against Philadelphia, fresh off his 140-yard performance against the Chargers. He's a boom or bust option. Are you feeling lucky? At number 37, we have Kenyon Drake, and he gets the Chargers. Now, he's averaging 7 carries a game and over 10 yards a catch, but we just don't know what his workload is going to look like and if Josh Jacobs is back. Michael Carter is here at 38, and he gets a good matchup in Tennessee. He's averaging 8 carries a game and 9.5 yards a catch. It's all about the matchup and the hope that his workload will increase, which it should. Some of the notable omissions that we have for this week are going to be Zach Moss against Houston, also Trey Sermon against a poor Seattle defense, and then J.D. McKissic against Atlanta and James Conner against the Rams. I think that these guys are super risky and we just don't know what their workload is going to look like, and they are better left on benches in week 4. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you haven't done it yet, if you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. This is Relentless Press. I am your host, Abram Opatz. We'll see you next time.